Security searched a single dad's bag. What his mom revealed next was incredibly touching. Jake surveyed the bustling airport, heart racing amid the chaotic whirl of families and laughter. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was a glittering beacon of joy, tugging at his hand, eager to adventure. She had no idea of the weight pressing down on him, the sacrifices he made to finally visit the small town his parents hailed from. He envisioned her frolicking through the fields his mother had played in, the very essence of childhood unbound. But right now, as they prepared to board their plane, his stomach twisted at the prospect of everything unraveling. "Sir, we need to take a look at your bag." The security officer's voice sliced through the ambient noise, and Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. They had been so close to finally escaping to the freedom he had drawn up in his mind. Anxiety darkened his thoughts, spiraling doubts about his worth as a father. Would they judge him? He was just a retail worker, barely scraping by. Did anyone see the sacrifice behind the filth of his paycheck? Just last week, he had worked a double shift, imagining the smile on Lily's face as they touched down. The hope had become almost tangible. As officers rummaged through his carry-on, his mind drifted back to a frayed memory of his mother, her voice a soothing melody in moments of despair. Life had thrown them punches, double shifts at the diner and whispered reassurances turned into a foundation of hope. This place, filled with happiness and expectation, was now a trap, tightening around him. What if his past, laden with struggles and fears, followed him, becoming a part of Lily's journey too? Jake's fingers trembled as he recalled the letter he had tucked away, his mother's words meant to guide him through darkness. Steel guitar music resounded, his heart thudded louder with every moment. Clenching his jaw, he fought against the swell of emotion, knowing it was just a bag search, yet it felt like a personal interrogation into his failures as a parent. Deep breaths, he reminded himself. Just breathe. Before he could spiral further, another figure stepped into his view. An elderly man, sporting a time-worn baseball cap, offered a warm smile. "Don't worry, son. Kids can sense when we're anxious. Just relax." There was something soothing in the man's voice that cut through Jake's anxiety like a warm knife through butter. They exchanged glances, a bond forged in understanding, both entangled in fatherhood's struggles. "Yeah, it's just I'm trying to give her a life I didn't have," Jake confessed, each word cutting deeper. The old man nodded knowingly, the corners of his lips crinkling. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue." The dialogue stirred something dormant inside him, a spark of resilience that he thought had flickered out. The letter still remained stuffed in the depth of his bag, but now, it felt different. It beckoned him almost, intertwining with the kindness of the stranger. But as the officer's eyes narrowed upon the letter they had discovered, Jake felt the warmth of connection chill. The pressed flower petals scattered around like fragile dreams at his feet. The realization swept through him: could he truly navigate this daunting road alone? Would he ever feel sufficient for Lily? Holding the letter, deeper questions pushed against his resolve. Did he have what it took to honor his mother, to mold a legacy of strength and determination for his daughter? Would he finally learn to embrace the love that defined who he was meant to be? The security team exchanged knowing glances, and Jake felt poised on the precipice of an uncertain future, every heartbeat echoing the weight of his unfulfilled promise. Jake felt exposed, as if the frayed edges of his heart were laid bare before the strangers around him. The security officers exchanged glances while rifling through his belongings, and a wave of self-doubt crashed over him, pushing down on his chest. What had once been an exciting journey toward family memories now felt like a looming storm threatening to swallow him whole. The warmth of the elderly man's voice echoed in his mind, a stark contrast to the chill engulfing him. "You're not alone," Jake reminded himself, clutching the letter tightly. It was a physical representation of his mother's strength, her unwavering belief in him. The more he focused on it, the more he could almost hear her words reverberating in his memory, reminders of resilience, of standing tall against the odds. Just then, one of the officers glanced up, raising an eyebrow as he scrutinized the letter. "What's this?" he asked, as if Jake's entire story lay within those delicate pages. The moment felt electric, the air thick with tension. "It's just a letter from my mom," Jake answered, forcing his voice to stabilize. "She wrote it for me a long time ago." Every syllable felt like a thin thread, connecting him to the past, to memories of childhood, to an unwavering love that had always pushed him to be better. Just the act of acknowledging it aloud seemed to ignite a flicker of purpose within him. "Does it mean something to you?" the officer pressed, his demeanor softening. Taking a deep breath, Jake found the courage to share. "It reminds me that I can rise above my fears. I'm trying to give my daughter what I never had, a sense of belonging, a sense of hope." The statement resonated louder than the commotion in the airport around him. Vulnerability had its own strength. Immediately, the officer's expression softened, and he nodded slowly. "We all want that for our kids." There was an understanding in those words, an acknowledgement of shared struggles and hopes that resonated deeply with Jake. As the officers continued their search, something shifted within him. He recognized the fight within himself that had long been dormant. What if this journey was not just about giving Lily a beautiful experience in a small town, but also about confronting the ghosts of his past? The insecurity from his childhood was still present, whispering doubts in the back of his mind, but this was an opportunity to rewrite his legacy. With every heartbeat, he started to envision the letter not merely as a reminder but as a challenge to actively embody the hope it represented. The thought of Lily's laughter in the fields filled him with an unexpected determination. He would be the father she deserved, not shackled by his past but strengthened by it. "Everything okay?" asked the elderly man, still standing close, sensing the transformation. "I think it might be," Jake replied, the spark of resolve igniting into something more formidable. "I've spent too long doubting myself. It's time to embrace who I am, father, worker, and son." As the security team finally wrapped up their search, releasing him from the momentary grip of scrutiny, Jake felt buoyed by newfound clarity. He turned to Lily, her eyes bright with innocence and curiosity, effortlessly walking in the life he wished to create. With determination flowing like a current through his veins, he vowed silently to himself, this time, there would be no hesitation. And as they made their way to the boarding gate, a small part of Jake wondered if he would face more than just the turbulence of travel. The thought teased his mind, suggesting an imminent confrontation not only with his insecurities but with the person he had yet to discover within himself. When would he truly understand what it took to rise above his past? The answer loomed heavy in his heart, stirring a blend of excitement and dread. What lay ahead wasn't just a journey to a small town, it was the beginning of a brewing storm threatening the barriers he had built. The time had come to face them, and for the first time, he felt ready. Jake stepped onto the plane, the familiar hum of engines drowning out the tumult of his thoughts. As he settled into his seat beside Lily, he felt a hint of anxiety pulse through him. Would he falter again? Enveloping himself in more self-doubt felt no longer like an option. He glanced out the window, the ground becoming a patchwork of greens and browns beneath them, and he felt the weight of the letter shift in his pocket, its presence grounding him amidst the uncertainty. Lily, absorbed in a brightly colored drawing pad, chatted away, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her father. He marveled at her unfiltered joy, the way she colored outside the lines without a second thought, embracing the world with both arms wide open. What made her different from him? Why couldn't he let go of the burdens that tethered him to an unworthy past? "Dad, look!" she exclaimed, breaking his reverie. She turned her pad to face him, revealing a crudely drawn character that bore an uncanny likeness to him, with curly hair and oversized glasses. "It's you, but happy." Jake chuckled softly, a short burst of laughter overshadowing his worries for a split second. "You think I'm not happy? I think you will be. Right?" Her innocent gaze bore down on him, causing a lump to form in his throat. Jake shifted, acknowledging the strength that resided in that simple question. He considered the weight of his response. How often had he allowed life's difficulties to eclipse his happiness? Yeah, I think so too, he replied, his voice steadying. As the plane glided through the clouds, Jake turned inward, grappling once again with what happiness meant and why it felt so out of reach. For him, it had always been wrapped in expectations. The fear of failure loomed larger than any potential for success, constraining him with its suffocating grip. But this journey was different. He recalled conversations with colleagues, each discussion peeling back layers of his professionalism, revealing a person who had the potential to excel. He tended to underestimate his abilities, often finding comfort in mediocrity. Yet, the glow in Lily's eyes urged him to challenge that narrative. Could he redefine his self-image? For the first time, he envisioned not just being a father for Lily's sake, but an individual capable of breaking free from the constraints he placed upon himself. The idea set off a cascade of thoughts. He could push himself to discover not just affection for his daughter but love for himself too, a belief that he deserved joy and success. As the flight continued, he took out his phone, pages of notes he scribbled for work awaiting him. Instead of retreating into familiar haunts of self-doubt, he curated a plan. What if he could take real steps to elevate himself professionally? The company had been discussing leadership roles, and while Jake had often disqualified himself from consideration, he felt a flicker of resolve. Hey, Dad? Lily's voice snapped him back to the moment. Can we make a drawing of the town we're going to visit? Of course. We'll make it the most colorful town there ever was, he replied, eyes twinkling at the thought. More than a simple drawing, it became a metaphor for the life he wanted to build, not only for Lily but for himself. His dreams were his own canvas, awaiting vibrant strokes. In that moment, a fateful decision solidified within him. He resolved to take the upcoming training seminar at work seriously, not just to improve himself for his employer, but to unlock a version of Jake that had been buried under layers of hesitation and self-doubt. But thoughts of the seminar also sparked trepidation. Was he truly ready to face the fear of inadequacy? As they descended towards their destination, the weight of that question loomed heavier than ever, blending excitement with an underlying sense of dread. What kind of Jake would emerge from the chaos on the other side? Would this trip be the catalyst for self-discovery or merely a whimsical adventure? The answers felt tantalizingly close yet maddeningly out of reach. One thing was certain. The journey was just beginning, and Jake knew he had only scratched the surface of a deeper transformation. The plane touched down, and as they prepared to disembark, the looming question danced in his mind, a whisper of what awaited him. What if he had to confront not just barriers of the past but the expectations of the present? As Jake stepped off the plane with Lily, he felt the air shift around him, alive with possibility. The smattering of activity at the airport, the sounds of families, businesspeople, and travelers filled his senses. It was a stark contrast to the cloud of self-doubt that had clung to him only hours before. Look, Dad. Lily pointed toward a bustling mural in the arrivals terminal, vibrant colors splashed across the walls. It looks like the town we're going to make our drawing of. Jake smiled at her enthusiasm. In that moment, Lily's excitement reminded him that every piece of art requires not just vision but also courage to unleash vibrant colors, even if they clash. Wasn't he this journey, this precarious venture into the unknown that lay ahead, his own artistic endeavor? Once they retrieved their luggage, he felt that familiar pang of anxiety squeezing his chest. A glance at the letter in his pocket reminded him of the weight he carried, not the physical burden of the bag or the simplicity of a drawing, but the moral quandaries that had built a fortress around his self-worth. How would he commence the transformation if he couldn't even reconcile his past? They reached their rental car, and as the engine hummed to life, Jake felt a twinge of resolve surge within him. It felt like a serpent of doubt channeling its energy into usable ambition. He had to confront the expectations he had allowed to shackle him. The training seminar wouldn't wait. Driving out through the vibrant surroundings sparked a startling realization. Every turn reminded him of how he had often apologized silently for his existence, tiptoeing around ambitions as if they were fragile. But what if he transformed into something bolder, more colorful? What are you thinking about, Dad? Lily's voice cut through his focused thoughts, grounding him once again. Oh, just planning what our first drawing will be, he replied, attempting to match her playful tone. Yet, alternately, he wrestled with his own internal dialogue. Each answer to her questions felt laced with unearned doubt. Maybe they both could paint dreams instead of merely impressions, leaving something of themselves on a squared canvas. The seminar promised strategies of leadership, a subject vital to his career, yet he could not shake the insistent mutterings echoing his fears of inadequacy. What if he wasn't worthy of those roles? What if he failed again? Once they reached the hotel, the lobby's ambience invited him to breathe deeper. To leave behind the doubts of his former self. He checked in, then turned to Lily, who was already soaking in the vibrant decor, spinning in a childlike dance of wonder. "My darling, how do you find happiness?" he asked, leaning into her innocence for insight. She paused, considering, her brow furrowing, then replied, "When things are colorful and fun. Like our drawing." The simple humor in her response made him smile. Perhaps his own adult worries had dimmed his understanding of happiness, a lesson buried deep beneath expectations. Sitting in their hotel room, Jake opened his laptop. The notes he had prepared for the seminar began to swirl on the screen, waiting for his input. But instead, he hesitated, tapping a finger on the keys. He wanted to write intentions, not just goals. He realized he could measure his journey not by successful outcomes but by genuine attempts at honest growth. As he typed, a realization struck him with vivid clarity. He needed to anchor his values, not just for his career but as a father aiming to impart lessons on courage and authenticity, rather than mere success as dictated by others. Then, a message popped up from a colleague inquiring about the seminar. It was an invitation for a preparatory meeting. A moment of panic washed over him before he quickly countered with a commitment to engage fully. The seminar was more than a professional step, this was his unveiling. Each line he wrote further solidified within him a desire not to let fear reign but to embrace growth as a son, a father, and an individual. Finishing up his thoughts, Jake felt a spark of determination igniting within him, building, shaping into something tangible. In that moment, he made a decision. A vow of sorts. This life-changing experience would mean confronting not only skill sets but breaking through that which hindered his ability to redefine purpose. But as he finished a rough draft for his seminar commitment, it dawned on him that the real challenge was not the seminar itself but confronting the expectations he had built in his mind. How would he parry the specter of doubt when faced with real challenges? The allure of the unknown beckoned him, promising revelations but shrouded in uncertainty. What if this place forged an unfamiliar version of Jake's, one willing to shatter the remnants of his past? That lingering question hummed in an unending loop, pulling at his heart. Would he emerge renewed, or would he slip back into old habits? The next day would be crucial, and the anticipation of facing his fears felt almost intoxicating. How long could he keep the facade up before crumbling? As night settled in, Jake wondered, could this venture lead him to a more profound truth about himself? What layers of self-discovery awaited him, just out of reach? In the morning light filtering through the hotel curtains, Jake awoke with an electric current of resolve dancing in his veins. Today was not just another day, it was the day he would challenge the narrative he had woven around himself, a depiction of a man shackled by doubts and yearnings. With every breath, he felt the weight of possibility pressing against his chest. Lily was still asleep, her peaceful expression contrasting sharply with the storm inside him. He rose quietly, eager to seize the moment and fill it with affirmative energy. He went to the small table and scrawled a few intentions on a notepad he had found in the room. Embrace vulnerability, lead with authenticity, transform failure into stepping stones. Each phrase ignited a flicker of purpose, urging him to etch his ambitions into reality. After a quick shower, he dressed with care, selecting a shirt that hinted at the vibrant colors Lily loved so much. It wasn't just apparel, it represented a declaration. He wanted to reflect his willingness to step out of the shadows of his past and into the brilliant spectrum of potential that lay ahead. As he tapped on the door to wake Lily, he could feel his heart racing, not just with parental duty but with fervent anticipation. Today, the seminar would be his canvas. The attendees were more than faces, they were witnesses to his transformation. He pulled in a deep breath, steeling himself. Ready for a colorful day? He asked as she padded out of bed, still half asleep but soon brightening with the same enthusiasm he had witnessed yesterday. Together, they enjoyed breakfast, filling the air with laughter. Lily's innocent questions about the day diluted some of Jake's anxiety, serving as a reminder that beneath the surface of purpose-driven intention was the simple pleasure of sharing experiences with his daughter. Arriving at the seminar venue, the room buzzed with energy. Jake scanned the space, noting familiar colleagues and strangers alike. They represented opportunities for connection and collaboration. The realization struck him: he didn't have to wear a mask of expertise. He could be authentically himself, fully embracing the tensions between past failures and future aspirations. As the sessions unfolded, Jake found himself engrossed, deciphering techniques for meaningful leadership and empowerment. With each speaker's insights, his thoughts churned, drawing connections between their teachings and his own experiences. Yet, the specter of fear lingered. This knowledge wasn't enough to erase a lifetime of insecurities. When it was his turn for the group discussion, the room quieted, anticipation hanging in the air like the morning mist. Jake stood before his peers, and a flash of vulnerability crept in. He could feel their eyes on him, scrutinizing his every twitch, every breath. The urge to backpedal surged within him, yet he anchored his resolve in the commitments he had scribbled earlier. "Today, I want to unfold a part of myself," he began, voice firm but laced with the tremor of honesty. "I've spent years living in doubt in a world that seemed vibrant from the outside, yet often remained gray on the inside. I've faced failures that wrapped me in shame." He paused, judging the emotional landscape of the room, gauging their reactions. Jake felt the heat of his confession seep through doubts. It was liberating, yet terrifying, to own those feelings in front of others. As he shared more about his journey, he found that unlike him, there was a collective bond forged through the common thread of struggle. The tension in his shoulders released as he acknowledged his vulnerabilities. They became lingering shadows he could finally confront rather than suppress. By the end of the session, something crucial had shifted. For the first time, he realized vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a prerequisite to authentic connection not only with others but with himself. With every interaction and every shared story, Jake felt himself shedding layers of doubt. He was not just a participant but a contributor, a vital piece in this larger tapestry of growth and search for meaning. Perhaps the most powerful layer of personal discovery lay in embracing who he was today and who he could become tomorrow. As the day drew to a close and Jake walked back to the hotel, a sense of resolve pulsed through him. He had touched the edges of transformation. Yet, lingering questions resurfaced: what would happen when he faced the real trials ahead? Would his newfound courage hold strong in the face of genuine challenges? Tomorrow would bring fresh encounters, and the true test of his commitment to personal growth lay just beyond the horizon, an unfolding story waiting to be shaped by his choices. What revelations awaited him as he continued this journey of becoming? The morning dawned with a brightness that felt more like a spotlight than the soft, welcoming glow Jake had experienced the day before. Today was laden with potential, yet uncertainty coiled around him like a silent predator. As he navigated through the bustling streets towards the seminar, he felt the electric hum of his previous day's momentum waver, testing his resolve. Jake had promised himself that each conversation today would be an opportunity, an intentional act of engagement rather than a passive exchange. He couldn't shake the thought that genuine connections were waiting just out of reach, but he had to push through the anxiety threatening to envelop him. The phrase "lead with authenticity" echoed in his mind, its weight heavy with the implications of self-disclosure. As he entered the venue, he spotted familiar faces and exchanged pleasantries, but now they felt superficial. Something larger loomed. He craved deeper connections, meaningful dialogue that transcended the usual pleasantries. The sessions began, and he tried to focus, but his mind often drifted to thoughts of his past experiences that turned from learning opportunities to haunting reminders of his earlier failures. When it was once again his turn to speak in an informal breakout session, a shiver of apprehension surged through him. This was the moment he had been preparing for. It was a chance to demonstrate the growth he had only begun to understand. Wishing for ease, he nevertheless felt a tightness in his throat as he approached the small group. "Thank you all for giving me the space to share," he started, adopting a posture of openness. "I realize how often I have shied away from discussing my failures. It's easy to project confidence, but I know now that it has to come from a place of honesty. I want to grow, not just for me, but for my daughter." He paused, the weight of his words settling into the room. Echoes of shared vulnerability swept across the faces before him, and he could see the thoughtful nods of recognition. Being a single dad isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. I often wonder how my past can shape her future. The silence that followed was thick. No one moved as Jake stood by his conviction and shared his fears about being an inadequate father, even while attempting to carve out a new identity for himself. Jake noticed a fellow participant leaning forward, clearly intrigued. "What do you think is your biggest hurdle?" she asked, and her earnestness startled him. After a moment of contemplation, he replied, "Perhaps it's finding balance between being a parent and pursuing my dreams. The responsibilities can sometimes overshadow what I want to achieve for myself." Her response, peppered with consideration, shifted something in him. "Have you thought about how your daughter might inspire that balance? Children have this innate ability to guide us back to what matters." Realization flickered through Jake. He was so focused on proving his worth that he had neglected his daughter's role as a natural motivator. The thread of purpose began to weave itself tighter around his heart, promising potential not just to find balance but also to discover who he could be as a father who inspired resilience. As he ventured back to his seat, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation coursed through him. Could he truly embrace this duality of being a father and a man in search of his dreams? Questions bubbled within him, yet amidst that uncertainty arose a burgeoning belief that everything was interconnected. In the midst of the final presentations of the day, another speaker caught his attention, a leader discussing the synergy between personal growth and professional achievements. Jake sat forward, eager to absorb insights that might further unravel his understanding of harmony in his life. As the session wrapped up, Jake felt a growing sense of urgency, a compelling need to put the discoveries into action before they faded into the background noise of everyday life. The realization struck that while transformation could begin internally, it demanded external movements. Decisions had to be made, paths chosen. But as he stepped outside, readying himself to embrace whatever came next, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked down to see a message from Lily's school. His heart skipped a beat. It would mark the first significant challenge to their newly forged bond. What awaited him was uncertain, but one thing felt clear: real growth often lay within the trials we dreaded most. Would he step up for her and solidify the changes he wished to embody, or would fear pull him back into old habits? Jake stared at the message, his heart racing as he recognized the school's name at the top of the screen. Panic gripped him momentarily. It felt like the walls were closing in, pressing against the newfound sense of purpose he had just glimpsed. The message detailed a troubling incident involving Lily, a confrontation with another child that escalated, provoking a need for Jake's presence. His mind swirled with possibilities. How could he support her? Was he even equipped to navigate this? Each thought spiraled into the next, demanding resolution while simultaneously overwhelming him with doubt. Taking a deep breath, Jake stepped back from the bustling world outside, drawing strength from the quiet intensity of the moment. He had decided earlier to embrace challenges, and this was certainly beyond anything he had anticipated. But if he wanted to inspire resilience in Lily, he needed to confront his own fears first. "Calm down," Jake whispered to himself, grounding his feet into the pavement as he centered himself. He recognized the duality of emotions swirling in his chest, a blend of protective instincts and the gnawing uncertainty of how to proceed as a father. Decisions had to be made swiftly. There was no time to overanalyze every aspect of the situation. He needed to get to the school, engage directly, and then only then sort through the complexity of the emotions involved. Jake moved with intention, navigating the streets that had felt suffocating moments before. With each step, he clenched his jaw, replaying his new mantra in his mind: lead with authenticity. It fueled his determination, rendering his trepidation a fleeting shadow. Arriving at the school, he was greeted by the familiar architecture, but today it felt charged with tension, the uncertainty hanging thick in the air as parents lingered nervously in the lobby. Jake couldn't shake the pit in his stomach. He glanced at his phone again, looking for reassurance from his last messages with Lily. They were simple and innocent, a stark contrast to the chaos he feared awaited them both. As the school official led him toward the main office, he took a moment to collect himself, pushing out the anxiety like a hot breath against cold glass. He had to be steady and present for Lily. He stepped inside the office to find the small girl sitting quietly, her shoulders slumped, a tinge of betrayal flickering in her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, kneeling down to her level. She looked up, her gaze empty yet searching for the understanding he hoped to give her. "What happened?" Lily hesitated, each word wrapped in caution. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Daddy. I just wanted to be left alone." Her eyes pooled with unshed tears, and he felt the helpless love prickling at his heart. "Sometimes, it feels easier to lash out when we're hurt," he replied softly, touching her arm reassuringly. "But we have to find better ways to express ourselves. Do you understand?" Her silent nod was small but significant, a glimmer of the connection he had to nurture. As they spoke, he realized how deeply this particular incident echoed his own struggles: the fear of being inadequate, the yearning for respect, and the silent wish to shield her from the world's harshness. In this moment, however, he knew that resilience was not about avoidance, it was about confronting challenges head-on. Their conversation shifted from the confrontation to understanding emotions, and as Jake listened to Lily express her feelings, he felt a swell of satisfaction and pride. He was finally embodying the father he aspired to be, engaging with her in a way that was not only nurturing but inspiring. Yet, as they completed their conversation and began to leave, another thought nagged at him. Were they merely coping, or should they prepare for the reality of a more profound challenge? Driven by the urgency of their situation, he contemplated ways to facilitate open dialogues about conflict resolution and emotional intelligence. What if these lessons could help Lily navigate life's inevitable challenges without fear? But just as the hope solidified within him, the weight of vulnerability and uncharted territory dawned again. Would he be able to foster this emotional growth, not just for her, but for himself as they continued to navigate their intertwined futures? As he headed back home with Lily by his side, a new message pinged on his phone, making his heart race once more. The sender was unexpected, and the content hinted at unresolved issues from his past he had hoped to leave behind. Now, that past was knocking at his door, ready to confront him once again. What would the message bring to light, and how would it impact the fragile growth he and Lily were just beginning to form? Jake sat in the dim light of their living room, Lily sprawled on the floor with her coloring book while he stared at his phone, the new message pulsating with the gravity of its implications. He had known that addressing Lily's encounter at school with empathy would be just the first step. Now, he had to confront shadows from his own past that threatened to dim his newfound clarity. His thumb hovered over the screen, considering what he should do next. Hesitation gnawed at him, but he realized that uncertainty couldn't define him any longer. He had chosen vulnerability with Lily, and it was time to extend the same courage to himself. Slowly, he opened the message. It was from an old friend, Sarah, whose abrupt exit from his life years ago had left a rift he had chosen to ignore. "We need to talk about what happened," she wrote. The words echoed in his mind, stitching together memories he had worked hard to forget. Confrontation loomed, not just with her but with the emotions he had buried beneath layers of self-preservation. "Daddy?" Lily's soft voice broke through his thoughts as she sat up, her crayons forgotten. That gentle sweetness in her demeanor twisted the knife of guilt deeper. Did he really want her to inherit his habit of avoiding anything uncomfortable? Shaping her emotional world was now more crucial than ever. Jake's heart swelled with the urgency to model honesty and resilience, even when faced with his demons. "Yeah, kiddo." He turned to her, forcing a smile to mask the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. "Can we talk about what happened at school?" The innocence in her inquiry made it clear this was her genuine curiosity, not a mere prompt. He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of each word woven into the fabric of their conversation. "Of course, Lily." As they shifted to the couch, Jake beckoned her closer, ready to navigate the complexities of emotions together. Around them, the turbulence of the past mingled clumsily with the present, a contrast he needed to analyze before it consumed him. "I thought fighting was what strong people do, but it makes me feel bad inside," she said, her small voice trembling slightly. "That's because strength isn't about hurting others or being tough," sweetness. It's about standing firm in your integrity, resolving conflicts peacefully, facing what scares us, he explained, measuring honesty with kindness. I think you've shown so much bravery today by talking it over. As her brow furrowed in concentration, a fleeting moment of pride fluttered within him. She was listening, absorbing everything he had learned the hard way but had failed to articulate during his own childhood trials. His heart raced at the thought that he could empower her beyond the boundaries he had faced, teaching her to express himself rather than react impulsively. But the underlying tension of Sarah's message lingered. How could he fully commit to nurturing Lily if he didn't reckon with his unresolved pain? Would confronting Sarah mean unraveling his stability? The thought terrified him. Daddy? Her voice shattered his loop of reverie. What if someone hurts your feelings? Then, he decided, casting a determined gaze across their shared space, I have to be brave and share those feelings. Just like I'm teaching you. She smiled back at him, trust radiating from her every feature, bolstering his resolve. Unearthing their emotions together offered a connection he had yearned for, but now a new reality dangled before him. His past waiting to unravel could either embolden him or threaten everything he had built with Lily. That night, as they sat in the warm glow of their home, Jake felt the swell of urgency once more. He dialed Sarah's number, the weight of the decision setting heavily on his chest. It was time to face what had been dormant for too long, both for himself and in his role as Lily's father. As the line rang, he felt a shift within him. What he would discover in this confrontation could either reinforce the foundation of their new adventure or shatter it completely. He needed to know if he could endure the truth. Not just for his sake but for Lily's growth as well. And the moment her voice answered on the other end, chaos and clarity collided, and Jake prepared to embark on a journey that may force him to redefine not only how he faced his past but what kind of father he wanted to be moving forward. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to Sarah's familiar yet hesitant voice, the echoes of their shared history colliding with the present moment. Jake? She asked, as if uncertain he would answer, her tone tugging at the long-buried fragments of their past. Yeah, it's me, he replied, feeling a sting of vulnerability wash over him. Each heartbeat amplified the weight of unasked questions, unsaid apologies. He fought against the urge to retreat into silence, grounding himself in the knowledge that he had made a commitment to both Lily and himself. I got your message. I wasn't sure if you'd ever want to talk again, she admitted, and Jake caught a tremor in her voice that mirrored his own tangled emotions. The silence stretched between them, charged with years of unresolved tension. In that moment, all the things left unsaid, the fights, the misunderstandings, the ways they had hurt one another, hovered painfully in the air. Look, Sarah, we have a lot to sort out. Not just what happened back then, but what's next for us, if anything. Can we start with the past? There was a need in her voice, a desperate hope he couldn't ignore, and he set his jaw, knowing he had to be honest. I thought we moved on, he began, but the bitterness he felt at her abrupt departure seeped through. You just, up and vanished. It left me with questions. I needed to. I was scared, Jake. You don't know how overwhelmed I felt. I didn't know how to handle it all, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. Scared. It was a word that resonated deeply within him, reflecting his own fears about parenting, about opening up to Lily, about facing the very real ghosts of their past. I know what that feels like now, scared to confront pain, scared of you leaving again. But I can't avoid it anymore. I have to face it. This is about Lily, too, isn't it? She asked, her tone shifting. Jake could sense an undeniable current of realization running through their conversation. Yeah, it is. I want to raise her to be strong, to deal with her feelings, but I can't do that if I hide from mine. You were part of my past, one I need to confront to give her the best of me. He felt the sincerity behind his words, and with each sentence, Jake sensed himself evolving not just as a father, but as an individual. A brief silence enveloped them, filled with the weight of their shared choices and fears. I've thought about reaching out so many times, she finally admitted. But I didn't know how to face you or what I might say. It's harder when we pretend the past didn't happen, Jake mused, recalling his earlier conversation with Lily. He realized their struggles mirrored each other, avoiding the difficult truths shaped their current emotional worlds. We need to face it so we can grow. A flicker of forgiveness ignited in him, illuminating the darkness he had kept at bay for too long. Let us not ignore the things that hurt us, Sarah. Let us talk through them, work through them, for our sakes, and for Lily. As she agreed, Jake felt an unexpected release of tension entwining with the thrill of confronting the unknown. This was a step toward healing, not just for him and Sarah, but for his role as a father. I hope we can find some peace, Sarah said softly. Me too, he replied, voice steady. But I won't sugarcoat it, I need you to be open, too. I want to understand why you left and what it meant for us. The gravity of the conversation deepened, and Jake realized that this could reshape everything he thought he knew about himself, his past, and how to carve out a better future for Lily. Then, abruptly, Sarah said something that made him freeze. There's more I need to tell you, a reason I left that day. It may change everything. His breath hitched, anticipation coiling within him like a tightly wound spring. As he braced himself for her revelation, Jake understood. Facing the truth wasn't just about reconciliation, it was about discovering buried secrets that could redefine all their existences. And with each second, the moment of truth approached, promising transformation. For him, for Sarah, and for Lily. As daylight crept into Jake's world, he took a deep breath, bracing himself for the conversation that would unfold. The reality that he was rebuilding his life with Lily lingered just beneath the surface, pushing him to embrace the truth without hesitance. He had already navigated so much, confronting his fears head-on had become a discipline. Sarah, whatever it is, I'm ready to hear it, he said, capturing the urgency of the moment. I understand if you're angry, she started, her voice quavering slightly, but the reason I left was tied to fears from my own past. I didn't just leave you, I was avoiding confronting my tumultuous family history. I was terrified I would repeat the cycle of chaos with us. Jake felt the grip of tension tighten around his chest, the memories of their shared happiness before everything had spiraled out coming back to him. Avoiding chaos led to more chaos, didn't it? He replied thoughtfully. We both hid. But I'm realizing now that it's not truly living. Sarah's silence after his admission felt heavy, yet it was marked by understanding. I thought stepping back would help protect you both. I didn't think of how much it would hurt. I'm sorry, Jake. I need to show Lily that facing challenges is key, that silence and avoidance don't define us, he said, a solemn vow strengthening his voice. That's what I want to give her. Then let us share that journey together, for her and for us, Sarah proposed. It felt as though they were finally grasping at the edges of reconciliation, navigating the pains of their past to pave the way for the future. Their conversation flowed deeper, weaving in and out of memories long buried and the paths they'd taken. Each revelation chipped away at the walls Jake had constructed around his heart. Yes, there was hurt and disappointment, but beneath it all, there was potential, a blueprint for healing. As he prepared to say goodbye, a weight fell from him. We need to embrace our truths. If I have a hope for Lily, it's that we become the adults we never had, he concluded. And with those words resonating between them, they both embraced the idea of reconciling their fragmented pasts to foster hope for their child. The next morning, a spark filled the air as Jake walked into the living room where Lily was sunlit and vibrant, bubbling with energy. Today was not just another day, today marked the first step toward transformation. Are you ready to draw? I have a new challenge for us. He exclaimed, his heart swelling with excitement. He pulled out a large canvas, eager to create something expansive and meaningful together. What will we draw? She asked, eyes lighting up with curiosity. I want you to help me create a mural of our journey. We'll paint our dreams together. It'll be filled with colorful moments, feelings, everything personal to us. And this time, we'll embrace who we are right now, he explained, grounded in the realization that vulnerability would foster the strength they both needed. Lily's face brightened, and she jumped off the couch. Can we include our happy faces? She giggled, already grabbing her palette. Absolutely. It'll be our canvas of courage, Jake replied, heart racing with pride as he watched her enthusiasm explode across the room. As they worked through vibrant colors, splashes of paint enveloped their home, full of giggles and acceptance. Jake guided Lily with stories about bravery and authenticity, nurturing lessons about emotions that extended beyond mere words. Every brush stroke was infused with purpose, each color a testament to the challenges they had overcome together. The mural started to take shape, and so did a newfound bond. This was more than an artistic endeavor, it was a celebration of their resilience. Later that evening, Jake took a moment to absorb their collective art, feeling accomplished not just as an artist or a father, but as a transformed individual. This was the moment he stepped into the legacy he intended to leave for Lily, a truth about parenthood and personal growth. He had finally embraced who he was and accepted his imperfections. He looked to Lily, who was now sprawled out on the floor gazing at the mural. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice brimming with anticipation. "It's perfect, Daddy. Just like us," she exclaimed, bounding over to share the space with him. It was a striking realization. By confronting their histories and embracing uncertainty, Jake had uncovered a well of strength, authenticity, and resilience he never had before. His past had molded him but wouldn't define the man he was destined to become. Feeling solidified in his newfound confidence, Jake vowed that this mural would become a lasting homage to their journey, a witness of warmth and acceptance of imperfections. He had conquered self-doubt, transforming it into motivation. And he had learned that strength didn't lie in avoiding hardship, it resided in the courage to confront it and the willingness to change. As he stood beside Lily in that moment, he realized he had achieved more than personal growth. He had also carved a legacy of hope, renewal, and a future filled with possibilities. This was his true achievement, the knowledge that he had not just become the father he wanted to be but also the individual he had always yearned to embody. And as he considered the path ahead, filled with adventure, challenges, and, undoubtedly, more growth, Jake understood, this was just the beginning. So, the question loomed: how would they continue to paint their story? Now, it's time for you to take action. If you experienced this emotional journey and found inspiration, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every engagement matters. You must comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Show your support for tales of personal overcoming.